gave me the opportunity to host this one. And I'm really looking forward to interact with such a great panel of highly experienced and intellectual bunch. And we successfully completed yesterday's session, which was highly interactive and participative. And I look forward to today's session. Today is the second day of the international webinar that we are conducting. And before I give any background, I just want to mention that the participants can ask questions in the chat box and also mention to which speaker the question is meant for. So these questions will be taken up at the end of the webinar. And also you have option to raise your hand. So there is an emoji, which is raise your hand. That also you can use it at the end of the session. So once you raise your hand, we'll unmute you and then you can ask your questions along with the name of the speaker who you want to ask the question. So moving ahead, I would like to give a brief background to the webinar. The Research and Culture Society, in partnership with Maharishi University and SKC Lawyers and Solicitors, has convened this two-day webinar on legal and contemporary issues in COVID-19 and disaster management. So COVID-19 has impacted nations across the world. It has disrupted lives, economies, and societies. The way ahead is to recovery planning, is to rethink approaches and mainstream COVID-19 response into development planning across sectors, with a vision to enable knowledge sharing and information to spur innovative thinking around issues surrounding COVID-19 pandemic management, specifically gender-based violence and social support. We have our honorable speakers sharing great insights with us today. So today's discussion will mainly be focused on the impact of this pandemic on education industry, children and women in particular, and our approach towards creating a safer world and enhancing future preparedness for any such future epidemics. So the speakers will also share their insights on the next steps to promote and build safer environment for the vulnerable, openness and inter-societal collaboration and resilience. With this background, I would like to introduce our guests of honor for today, who are from different parts of the world, but have played a substantial role in making this world a safer place, a safer habitat before and during COVID-19. With this, I would like to introduce our international guest and chief guest of the session, Deborah Rue. Our international guest is from the USA. Firstly, I would like to thank her from the bottom of my heart to accept the invite for being a speaker in today's session, despite so much time difference between the countries. And she had to get up really early in the morning to be part of our session, and we are indebted to her for her commitment. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for joining us. Giving a brief background to Deborah's profile. Deborah is an international speaker and advocate. She is a global disability inclusion strategist, a market influencer, internationally recognized keynote speaker, published author, branding expert, successful entrepreneur, and an exceptional mother. Deborah is a host of a popular program by the name Human Potential at Work, which has audience in 86 countries and 113 regions. She has authored many books. She is an active public figure, and she was invited to address the United Nations General Assembly at the Conference of State Parties 9th session by the President's Office of the UN in 2016. Most recently, Deborah was selected as the North American representative for the United Nations, International Labour Organization's Global Business and Disability Network. Additionally, in 2018, the US State Department selected Deborah as a global speaker and ambassador for the United States when visiting foreign nations and speaking on inclusion and disability. She has also been selected as a Global Goodwill Ambassador in 2018. Deborah is a recognized global influencer, frequently interviewed by various media outlets, and she has a significant presence on many social media platforms. She's also the co-founder of the award-winning AXS Chat, one of the world's largest tweet chats, having over 8 billion plus tweets. So with this, I also want to give a small background of how Deborah received her call to action. So her call to action was when she was told by the so-called experts that her daughter Sarah, who was born with Down syndrome, could never walk or talk. So she refused to accept the prognosis and perception of this condition. Driven by her unshakable faith in the power of human potential and the love for her daughter, Deborah was determined to dedicate her life to create a path to empowerment and the success for all those with disabilities. Deborah has built a multi-million-dollar firm focused on ICT accessibility. Deborah was convinced that the real disability is being unable to see human potential, and she formed RU Global Communication. This new firm focuses on global diversity inclusion strategies, digital marketing, and branding, amongst other services. Deborah consults with multinational and national corporations and the United Nations. Deborah is now internationally renowned global keynote speakers and travels around the world inspiring and advocating for governments and corporations to include people with disabilities. With this, I hand over the dais to our honorable international guest and speaker, Deborah Roop.
Thank you so much. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. And thank you for inviting me too. It's always such an honor to speak. And I have a real fondness for India. So someday I still haven't come. And as soon as COVID will let me, right now, nobody wants Americans to visit their borders. But someday, hopefully we'll have a new president and we'll fix some things that we've created. But I really, really appreciate being invited. So how should I just pull the presentation up on my end, or
yes, you can share the screen?
That's right, I know this stuff, sorry. Hold on one second, let me go back to the right window. So I'm just gonna make sure that it is up in the back. So, thank you very much. And again, I really appreciate it. And it's, you know, I'm old enough now that I get to have all these beautiful accolades behind me, but it was always about, I just don't understand why society doesn't want to include all of us, because we have so many problems. And so if everybody could be included, if women could really truly and I don't know if you'll hear feedback, but somebody's talking, so I'll let everybody put themselves on mute. But I just think it's very important that societies understand that all humans, even if human beings are women,
I'm sorry for the disturbance, Deborah. I request all the participants to please put their mics on dispute, sorry, on mute. Patel sir, please mute everybody except the speaker.
Okay, thank you. And you know, I know the person probably doesn't realize that they're not muted, so I'll just, I'm going to go past that. But COVID-19 is certainly teaching all of us a lot, and it's interesting to watch countries, how they're handling it. And of course, country in the United States, we are not doing a good job with it. It's very, very chilling to watch the amount of people that have died from it. We also are learning so much more about the opportunities we have to make things better, not only in the United States, but all over the world. So as everybody rushed home to stay safe, a lot of organizations, a lot of corporations, they lost productivity, they had connectivity problems, we found out technology issues. We thought some of these had already been implemented and had been of the way society worked. But we found very quickly that wasn't true, that 40% of our children could not be educated in our schools. 40%, that's pretty substantial. We just were not prepared to really use our technology to work from home, to do our telemedicine, telehealth, virtual education during the pandemic. So we've learned a lot and we're still unraveling it. And of course, so is everyone else. I know India is also we're all trying to figure out how to stay safe in this pandemic and prepare us so that as we move forward, we can all stay safe. So it's a great opportunity to build a world that actually works for everyone. My daughter with as Sumantra said, I have a daughter with Down syndrome. She's 33 years old now. And what we found in the United States, and this is certainly happening all over the world, is that we have antiquated laws that actually make it harder to treat our citizens fairly. We have conscious and unconscious biases. There's still terrible discrimination going on, especially with our brown or Black citizens and other disenfranchised citizens. People are isolated, and so we are seeing more suicides. We're seeing more domestic abuse. We're seeing all kinds of problems that isolation can bring, even though this is a problem that people with disabilities, especially people with physical disabilities, have been dealing with for forever. And so, and then of course, accessibility issues, accessibility to our technology, to connectivity, accessibility to healthcare, to food, accessibility all the way across the board. So the digital inclusion and the lack of this accessibility are continuing to show, especially the corporations that I usually deal with, that these are economic imperatives that everybody has to have if they want to truly participate. So even though these times are hard for us and we're trying to figure out, how to really make sure that everybody's included, and now we have artificial intelligence coming. So we also need to make sure that we don't take these biases that us as human beings have and program them into our artificial intelligence. And so we really, as societies, need to look very carefully about this technology and how we don't accidentally program our biases right into that technology, so that now the computers are biased against women and minority groups, diversity groups, people with disabilities, and on and on. So there's a lot that we can learn from these times about our societies, about innovation, about broadening opportunities for all people. Because I think, and once again, I'm a woman, but I think it's ridiculous that we think certain parts of our societies don't matter. Because what if that little girl with a disability in a village in India is the one that's going to, come up with a cure for, some of our greatest problems? So it's just so important. And more we're seeing our children, our young children, become really important advocates all over the world to us. So I just think it's critical that society learns that every single human being does have value. Every human has the ability to contribute if society lets us contribute. So as I do talk often from the lens of disabilities. And there are more than 1 billion people in the world with disabilities, because part of being a human being means that you might have a disability when you're born, like my daughter, or you might acquire a disability later in life. My husband was hit by a car. The driver was drunk in the middle of the day and hit my husband when he was a child, when he was 11 years old. And at the time, I didn't know my husband, but at the time he actually died on the scene. They revived him. They took him to the hospital. He was in a coma for about 10 days. He didn't go back to school for months. It was a really bad accident. And he suffered, his eye fell out, his hips were crushed, but he sustained a very, very bad traumatic brain injury. Unfortunately, when your brain is injured that bad, it'll rewire and it can figure out how to do things. But over time, your brain will age differently. Sorry. So my husband now has dementia, but it's important to note that countries all over the world, including India, there are at least 40 to 80 million people in India with disabilities. In the United States, 1 in 4 people in the United States identify as having a disability. So it's just, the numbers are staggering. And once again, to decide certain parts of our populations don't matter, I think is just a big mistake. Also, the world is aging. We are seeing, we're expected over 2 billion people, or 900 million people in sorry, I can't see my screen very well, but the numbers continue to grow and grow. In the United States, we have 70 million Americans that are over the age of 56, and we're seeing a tech gap. We're seeing 5 generations in the workforce, and the generations sometimes are fussing with each other because why don't you just retire and leave the opportunities to us when actually everybody is needed. We're seeing cultural clashes and differences, cybersecurity issues, especially with this population. And we're seeing people want to age in place. They don't want to go back and just be forgotten. Just go get on the rocking chair and we're going to forget about you. We need all of us to solve these world problems. We also want to make sure that the corporations step up and help more, because it's wonderful what the NGOs are doing and the UN and things like that, but our corporations are the one that have the money all over the world. And so we need them to get involved, and we need them to be looking at certainly the return on investment, their shareholder value, but we don't want you just to be looking at only profits at the expense of people, which has happened over and over and over again. And so society is having much different expectations of our corporations, and we're making it clear that we have that. Also, our younger generations are saying, we're not going to work for a company if you're this big, gigantic company and you're not doing the right thing by society. And the corporations are hearing that and real nervous. They're a little bit nervous about what us people are saying in society. So I great for you to have corporate social responsibility, but including people in the workforce, educating people, that's not always only about a charity. Sometimes there's certain people that have such severe disabilities that they need to be accommodated in workforce. That doesn't mean that they can't value, especially with technology right now. So I already mentioned this a little bit, but societal expectations continue to change, especially as our world shifts and changes so dramatically. And it's frightening to watch what's happening in our world. I know here in the United States, our hurricanes are much stronger. The flooding, the fires, it really seems, it's very dire and very scary. The flooding's coming on over and over and over again in my part of the United States. And once again, the younger generation, they're just tired of it. They're tired of the elders, I should say, not really focusing on the right problems. It seems like if our earth is in trouble and we're living on it, that should be a priority. But it also should be about certainly taking care of our planet and focusing on climate action, but also we need organizations to be diverse, and we want to see that they're diverse. We want women included. We want women in leadership roles, more leadership roles. We're very smart. We're collaborative. We work well together. But we also want to see, people from different cultures. We want to see people with disabilities. We are finding that when you have a more diverse workforce, you build a better product. You do better with your customer service. You do better with your service and all the different solutions that you're trying to provide, because people think differently based on what kind of experience they've come from. I think as a woman from the United States, then maybe I have different experience to pull from than maybe Sumutra is thinking when she's, advocating as a lawyer for people in India. So there's value to bringing different people together in different situations because we're more innovative and creative and we can solve problems better together. So, and also, once again, the employees are expecting that the corporations do the right thing by society, not only by them, but for society and for customers as well. I think it's also so important to talk about the intersectionality of all this, because when we're talking, because here in the States right now, we're fighting each other to try to figure out our rights. And we thought we had figured them out, but we had laws, but we weren't really following our laws. And so women still are being terribly underpaid compared to men. And if you look at a white woman, a Caucasian woman versus a woman of color, or a woman with a disability, it drops. Each time it drops more and more. So I will make more money than a woman of color. And a woman of color will make more money than a woman with a physical disability. So there's all these intersectionalities that have to be considered when we're talking about these topics to make sure that, once again, we are all included. And once again, we better all be included because we are in crisis all over the world. I can't imagine anybody can't see that these days. So it's very, very important that when you include people, yes, please include women, but include women that are diverse. Make sure you're including women from all the different diversity groups, and you're including men from all the different diversity groups, because the more we come together, the more we can really solve the world's problems and understand why people add value. Also, ICT, the Internet Communications Technologies, totally changing the world for people with disabilities. We now have driverless cars. We have a lot of driverless car features. We can do 3D printing of prosthetics. We have smart glasses. We still are working on that technology. The ecosystem, the exoskeleton, I should say, that really helps people. We see corporations stepping up to make a difference. I'd like to see them step up a whole bunch more, but I love the work Ernst & Young is doing with mental health. I'm a big fan of a lot of the tech for good that Huawei's doing, diversity inclusion at the Hilton, and the Marriott's doing great stuff. Dell is working on climate action. Want those laptops landing in our landfills? What can we do to help others? And then there, Lilly Pharmaceuticals, another example I put up here, but there's some good example, but at the same time, there's a lot of work to do. I still feel like right now I'm having to catch corporations doing the right thing. And I look forward to a day when they're really doing a much better job and they're letting the diverse groups of their corporations really add to the value. There's also a direct path to the community. Social media has allowed us to find our voices. I was interviewed by a young woman in India. She's 22 years old. Her parents divorced, and so she is actually supporting her mother. And she came to me, she interviewed me on a podcast she just created. And she gave me such hope for the future. This is such a smart young woman. So why don't we listen to all of the generations and all the different things? Because right now social media is allowing us to talk to each other. But at the same time, remember, just because somebody is not responding doesn't mean they're not listening to what you're saying on social media. So try to be mindful that you don't know who's listening to your conversation when you're on social media. So try to say things that add value and help the world get better instead of making us all feel a little bit more afraid. So in summary, because I don't want to go over time too much, the business case for diversity and inclusion, it's clear. We have so many great studies. Technologies are defining everything we're doing, including the workforce. Corporations, you know, I used to say they're leading the change. I think they can do much, much better, but they certainly are engaged in the conversation. But I really should change that bullet because they have the opportunity to lead the change. Some of our governments worry me. I think some of the decisions governments make, they're hurting the people, not helping. So I'm not seeing as much leadership from them, but we all have to be agents of change. So let me turn it back over to you. I want to be mindful of all the other amazing guests that you have.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you for being mindful about the time. And thank you for sharing great insights and enriching viewpoints with us. This was a very important information shared with us, and these issues that you've discussed transcend nations, and they've been posing major threat to equality across the world. You rightly said that human potential is immense and it must be identified and acknowledged, because disability cannot be a barrier or a determining factor to somebody's potential. This was a really informative session, ma'am, and it makes us ponder as to what we are doing towards addressing the issue of disability in our own nation across the world. So we also completely agree with you regarding your point about the diversity, about having diversity at workplace. Yes, we completely agree that diversity at workplace increases productivity. It has a whole lot of benefits. So thank you again. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights. Thank you once again, Deborah. Moving on, I will introduce our next speaker. Thank you, ma'am. Introduce our next speaker, Dr. Annobel Mehra. Dr. Mehra is an associate professor with Maharishi University, teaching various subjects of law. She practices the applicability of those laws in the real life by creating awareness and promoting gender sensitization among students. She has been actively advocating the need for anti-sexual harassment committees in colleges. With this, I hand over the dais to ma'am to share her perspective and views on today's topic. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm audible. Thank you, Sumitra. Good afternoon, one and all. I, Dr. Annobel Mehra, Associate Professor in Maharishi University. Again, I am thankful to our chief guest, Deborah ma'am, for providing us valuable time for the wonderful information. And I also welcome Bhavna ma'am to join us. Theme of today's webinar is impact of COVID-19 on education industry and women. So I would like to discuss this thing. That basically the impact of COVID-19 is observed in every sector around the world. The education sectors of India as well as world are badly affected by this. It has enforced the worldwide lockdown, creating very bad effect on the students' life. Around 32 million learners stopped to move schools and colleges and all educational activities halted in India. The outbreak of COVID-19 has taught us that change is inevitable. It has worked as the catalyst for the education industry to grow and opt for the platforms with the technology, which has not been used before. The education sector has been fighting to survive the crisis with a different approach and digitizing the challenges to wash away the threat of the pandemic. According to the UNESCO report, it had affected more than 90% of total world students population during mid-April 2020, which was later reduced to nearly 67% during the June 2020. Outbreak of COVID-19 has impacted more than 100 million of students and youth across the planet. Even as per the UNESCO report, about 14 millions of the primary and the 13 millions of the secondary students are affected, which are two mostly affected levels in India. To prevent the spread of COVID-19, the government of India has taken a number of preventive measures. The union government declared the countrywide lockdown of all the educational institutions. CBSE postponed all the examinations and higher secondary schools on March 18 throughout the India. Even UPSC postponed the interview for the civil service examination. Similarly, most of the state governments and other educational boards postponed examination due to the outbreak of COVID-19. Almost all the state government ministries have taken measures to ensure that the academic activities of the schools and colleges do not hamper during the lockdown period. They have instructed the schools to hold their classes online. The lockdown has accelerated adoption of the digital technology. The Ministry of the MHRD has made several arrangements, including online portals and educational channels through the direct to home, TV, radios, for students to continue learning during the lockdown. Students are using popular social media tools like WhatsApp, Google Meet, Telegram, YouTube, Facebook Live, etc. for online teaching system. Even the ICT of MHRD is a unique platform which combines all the digital resources for online education. Even Diksha portal contains e-learning content for students, teachers, and parents aligned to the curriculum, including to the video lessons, worksheets, textbooks, and the assessments. Under the guidance of the National Board of Education and NCRT, the content has been created by more than 250 teachers who teaches the multiple languages. The app is available to the use of offline. And one more source, e-Pathshala, is an e-learning app by the NCRT for the class 1 to 12. Other source is National Repository of Open Education Resource Portal, provides a host of resources for the students and the teachers in the multiple languages, including books, interactive modules, and the videos, including the host of STEM-based. But still, there are negative impact of COVID-19 on the education life. Education sector has suffered a lot due to the outbreak of COVID-19. It has created many negative impact on the education, and some of them I'm discussing right now. There was is the educational activity hampered. Classes have been suspended and the examination at the different levels postponed. Different boards have already postponed the annual examination, and the entrance test admission process got delayed. Due to the continuity of lockdown, students suffered a loss of nearly 3 months of full academic year of 2020-21, which is going further deteriorate the situation of continuity in education. And as the students would face much difficulty in resuming school after a huge gap. And other is problem is unprepared teachers and the students for the online education. Not all the students and teachers are good at it, or at least not all of them are ready for this sudden transition from face to face learning to online learning. Or most of the teachers are just conducting lectures on video platforms such as Zoom, Google Meet, etc., which may not be real online learning without any dedicated online learning platform. And basically there is one more impact on the employment. Most of the recruitment got postponed due to the COVID-19 placements for students may also be affected by the companies delaying the on the board of the students. Unemployment rate is expected to be increased due to the pandemic. In India, there is no recruitment in government sector, and fresh graduates fear withdrawal of their job offers from the private sectors because of the current situation. Even reduce the global employment opportunity also. Some may lose their jobs from the countries, and pass of students may not get their jobs outside India due to the restrictions caused by the COVID-19. Many Indians may have returned home after losing their jobs overseas due to the COVID-19. Hence, the fresh students who are likely to enter the job market shortly may face difficulty in getting suitable employment. Many students who have already got job through the campus interview may not be able to join their jobs due to the lockdown. The Indians who have been doing their jobs abroad may lose their jobs. Recent graduates in India are also fearing the jobs. Even the COVID-19 has impacted immensely to the education sector of India. Though it has created many challenges, various opportunities are also evolved. The Indian government and the different stakeholders of the education have explored the possibility of open and distance learning by adopting different digital technologies to cope up with the present crisis of COVID-19. But India is not fully equipped to make education reach all the corners of the nation via digital platform. The students who are not privileged like others will suffer due to the present choice of digital platform. But universities and governments of India and restlessly trying to come up with a solution to resolve this problem. But the priority should be to utilize the digital technology to create an advantage position for the millions of young students in India. It is the need of for the Education Institute to strengthen their knowledge and the information technology infrastructure to be ready for facing COVID-19 like situations. Even if the COVID-19 crisis stretches much longer, then I think there is an urgent need to take efforts on maximum utilization of online platform, that the students not only complete their degree in this academic year, but also to get ready for the future digital oriented environment. The concept of work from home has greater relevance in such pandemic situation to reduce spread of the COVID-19. India should develop creative strategies to ensure that all the children must have sustainable access to the learning during the pandemic COVID-19. The Indian policies must include various individuals from the diverse backgrounds, including remote regions, marginalized, and the minority groups for effectively delivering the education. I think, Sumitra, right over this thing right now. Thank you, Sumitra.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your golden words of wisdom and enlightening us on what education industry has suffered, ma'am. The government has been very proactive and has tried its best to ensure that students do not suffer. But unemployment is definitely a humongous challenge that we have to fight with. And this pandemic has been very difficult for all of us. We've all gone through a lot of trauma and discomfort, mentally and physically both. So thank you for sharing those words of wisdom, ma'am. Moving on, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who's the highly effervescent Rena Khatri Tandon ma'am. Rena ma'am is a human rights social activist and awardee at United Nations, at World HRD Congress. She is the founder of Empowering Lives, Passion to Profession in Young Minds, and she's also founded a foundation by the name RKT, which works towards inclusiveness, gender sensitization, and equality, and justice for women and children of all genders. She is a breakthrough coach, certified POSH compliance expert, and handles trainings for many B2B organizations and trusts. She is also an external member of the ICC committee with various MNCs. She works with companies in Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, and other cities across India. She is a two-time TEDx speaker at Gateway and the founder of Right to Rise. Right to Rise is India's first and only ISO certified POSH organization which is into training, compliance and auditing. She is also a keynote speaker at various international and global conferences for women and leadership and gender equality. With this, I hand over the dais to our very honorable speaker, Raina Tandon ma'am. I've unmuted you, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon and good evening for everybody. I'm not aware what the time is for Deborah and all the people abroad, but a very warm welcome. Thank you very much, Advocates Sumitra Chaudhary ji, the program director, and the entire setup and team. I'm sure it's a great effort to bring in so many people and so many interested participants who are here to hear so many well-known, knowledgeable experts. So today the theme of the session is very interesting. It's more about citizen rights, contemporary duties, and many more things. I work into areas of POSH, POXO, and human rights. Today I will share a few insights about all of them in alignment. You could be an interactive audience, and it would be very nice if you could always ask questions at the end of the session. I wanted to ask you, how many of us know how many human rights do we actually have? I'm not here to give you just a lot of information bombarding, because I'm sure we all know a lot more, and there are many esteemed advocates, judges, Supreme Court people, and many other acknowledged dignitaries with me today. But I ask very simple questions which make us even boggle our mind and brainstorm our very basics. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, that many of us, if I have to even ask you how many human rights we have and what are our basic citizens' rights, half of them would know only 3 or 4 and not more. So it's not about all the information that is yielded to us, but it's about carrying on an implementation which is much more practical today, my friends. We all are highly knowledgeable and very excellent in our work. And we are trying to create this change every day. But I urge to tell you one important thing, and that is that if we don't know the basics, we won't be able to raise or rise all the people who are there in our society. Because at the end of the day, 90% and more people are only from the rural, semi-rural, or even from our what we call the people. And our people have to be educated, not the people who are educated already. Coming to what is human rights and why are we here? Let me give you a little insight. Human rights are moral principles or norms that describe certain standards that we need to follow in human behavior. And regularly they are protected by nature, by legal rights, in municipal and international law. They are commonly understood as inalienable fundamental rights. If I have to say they are inalienable fundamental rights and they are inherited by human beings regardless of their origin, location, trade, language, religion, ethnicity or any other status. हम यही बोलने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि चाहे हम कोई भी कलर के हो, कोई भी कास्ट के हो, कोई भी क्रीड के हो, हमारे ह्यूमन राइट्स सबके लिए सेम है. इक्वालिटी के नाम पे हम लोग बहुत बार कुछ कुछ बोलते रहते हैं, हम समझने की कोशिश करते हैं, लेकिन आज भी हमारे जमाने में इक्वालिटी की नाम ही नहीं है. Do we still have women, children, men, transgender, LGBT, queer community, all of us having equal rights? We don't. We talk about citizens' rights, which is a little different from human rights. I would say the destiny of human rights is in the hands of our citizens, in our communities, in our people. If I was determined today, I am the founder of Right to Rise, and I say each person has the right to rise. I was determined not to become an American citizen, a Finnish citizen, because I have traveled all across the globe. But आज मैं यही बोलती हूँ कि मैं Indian citizen हूँ. I tell that I am proudly an Indian citizen because we are one of the best nations who have been given all the fundamental rights, all the citizens' rights, and still we are not able to bring in that among our people. We are not able to bring in the reasons that we can join together and do something for our societies, for liberty of our citizens, for inheriting and increasing our backgrounds, for removing hatred and other disturbances or differences. Are we able to do that today, if I have to ask you? Genuinely, if you have to go back and see, we are still not yet to do it. We are still to do a lot of work. When Advocate Sumitra ji called me for this session, I was thinking, what is that I can give you with so many of you so knowledgeable to me? I can only tell you one thing. Wherever there is law, wherever there is order, wherever there is police, wherever there is dignity, wherever there respect, we all have it. Like only when we respect ourselves, only when we realize those citizens, those rights, those duties we are empowered with, and we start using them and putting them in practice. Yes, I speak on equality, on gender sensitization. I talk to many people today telling them that sensitivity and empathy can only come in. हम sensitive और empathy तभी ला सकते हैं जब हम दूसरे को सुने. When I talk about POSH, which is Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act for Women, when I talk about gender sensitization, it all comes down to our ground rules. The freedom to equality, the freedom to speech, the freedom to expression, the freedom to understand, the freedom to be heard. They are already given to you by our citizen rights. They are already given to you and blessed with our human rights. Equality, freedom, respect, dignity, and many more. But yes, even today we don't know all of them. And even if I say, what are my human rights? Do people know there are human rights with religion? Do they know there's human rights with race, there's creed, there's castes, there's what are our citizen rights? Our citizen rights mostly are into freedom of worship, right to promote a fair trial, right to vote in elections, right to run electorate offices, right to have a social security system, right to live, right to liberty, right to happiness, right to even go and work wherever we plead and wish to. But even today, we don't follow all of these. Right to get educated, most high of all. We talk of change of policies, we talk of change of new systems, we talk of all the possible changes to already existing systems, but are we actually following the base systems? That's my question. Even today, we talk about pandemic, COVID, and all the problems. Why can't we talk on the solutions? Why can't we see the brighter picture? I think even having so many problems, we are still connected online. We are still 120 of us here today to create that change, to create and relive and instigate and go ahead and propagate our rights, our citizen rights for each one of us individually, because our citizen rights are already devised by our constitution and law. We have various amendments made also, but are we actually known to them? Not yet. Not yet, my friends. We have the POSH law, we have the POXO law, we have the human rights, we have the constitution, we have law, order, police, everybody to help us. I urge you today, as the founder of Right to Rise, if each one of you really believe, one thing I would only respect and request. Go today, Google out at least and see what are your basic fundamental rights, what are your basic citizen rights, what are your basic rights to live with dignity, pride, inclusiveness, and create a beautiful world together. Thank you so much for hearing me. Thank you so much from all the dignitaries who are here. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Dr. Annobel. Thank you, Advocate Sumitra ji, and all the other people who would be talking here. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thought-provoking and wonderful session, Raina ma'am. We are so proud of the work that you're doing, and you really pointed out very important aspect that it is really important to know the basics. So I've also realized with experience that there is information lacking at each and every level. And it is that we never make the effort to even know what is the basic information that every person should be aware of. Or probably you could say that there should be some change in the education system or the way we are being educated, that we are not giving priority to something that is practical and close to our life every single day. So yes, very well pointed out that everybody should go home and read, go and read the Constitution and at least know what their fundamental rights are.
Ma'am, to make a change, Advocate Sumitra ji, sorry to interrupt, to make a change, you need to know your basics. If you don't know your ABC, you cannot write a book.
Absolutely. That's right, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was such an honor and a privilege. Thank you for this honor. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Anuji and Dr. Bhavna, for all your comments. Thank you. I've seen you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we are very thankful and grateful to you that you shared your views and perspective, and you are also leading the change to make workplace safer for women, for the vulnerable segment. Many a times leading the change is much needed, and especially in challenging situations like this. So thank you for the incredible work that you're doing for the humanity and for building safer workplace for future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce our honorable speaker, Professor Bhavna Mehta ma'am. A brief introduction. Dr. Mehta is head of the department and professor in social work at the Faculty of Social Work, Dean Officer on Special Duty, Faculty of Law, the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. She is a qualified social worker with almost 30 years of experience in the field of socially on women and children's issues, especially in the area of violence, health, human rights, empowerment, rights of a child, gender development, and corporate social responsibilities. She's also a coordinator of the Social Research Development Cell of the Faculty of Social Work and has undertaken almost 32 research projects funded by the government, voluntary organizations, industries, and international funding organizations. As an outcome of her doctoral work, Dr. Mehta has initiated a field action project to support survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse at the public hospital of the city in collaboration with the voluntary organizations working on women's rights. Professor Mehta is associated with many women, children rights groups at the local and national level. She has been invited many a times by University of Punjab, Lahore, Pakistan, University College Dublin, Ireland, University of South Carolina, USA, as a visiting faculty, and she has given a number of public lectures on topics of social relevance. Recently, Dr. Mehta was the only Asian woman to have been invited by the Council of International Fellowship Israel under its peace program. She was the only Asian to be part of the core team to work on the quality and standard of professional exchange program of for Council of International Fellowship. Dr. Mehta is a gender trainer who's widely traveled and has presented her work in many national and international forums. We are thankful that you accepted our invitation, ma'am. With this, I hand over the dais to our honorable speaker, ma'am. Over.
For that elaborated introduction. I don't think it was required since I was asked to send, I sent what I had. But anyway, thank you so much. And let me also thank the organizers for inviting me to this wonderful audience. And I'm so happy that I agreed to be part of this. It was a delight to listen to Deborah and Anu and Raina, all three of them. I think they have really set the good tone to this entire webinar and have touched upon very, very important aspects of our lives, and I really enjoyed it. And what I have decided to talk today is on the conditions and relate, how lockdown and COVID-19 pandemic has impacted one particular group of our, and very important group of our society, and which I see many of them present here today, and that is women. The other half of the population. And Deborah will agree that we have to talk about diversity and inclusion. And that's what, really motivates me to keep talking about this particular issue, which is very, very important. I have prepared some slides because, I'm so used to using slides. But of course, we can always have discussions around different aspects as and when the questions are thrown open on any aspects related to women. As we know that women are marginalized and excluded society in all over the world, barring Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, and as Raina said, like as a citizens, we all enjoy equality, supposed to enjoy equality, but all of us from our experiences also know that how this equality is translated in real lives. So while there are a number of issues which one can touch upon related to women, I would be talking very briefly, of course, keeping the timeline in mind, related to one very important issue on which I've been working for past more than 3 decades, and that is related to domestic violence. It'll unfold as we go further. This is just to keep a kind of build a common canvas for all of us. We know that though we have equality as per our constitution and preamble talks about it, but India has never been exemplar for that, and that we can see from with number of statistical evidences that we have in terms of the sex ratio, child sex ratio. So the child sex ratio tells us that we are so less. So in time to come, we will be further less in terms of sex ratio, in terms of the number of men that we have in our society. Female literacy ratio is also less. Children are malnourished, and out of these children who are malnourished, girls form the major constitute, and our women's body mass index is also quite below the normal. So the point is the equality is there, but how it is translated and reality is the issue which this figures tells us. The very recent data by UNICEF, of course, it is again a 3 years old data, but still that's the last data that is available. We know that 27%, that is 1/4 of our girls in India get married before 18 years, and 7% are married before the age of 15 years. And let me tell you, these are the reported age. In reality, still it could be worse data that we can get. And we have, this is the absolute number of child brides which UNICEF has brought out. There are some other more statistics which I'll not go in detail due to paucity of time. But it all says that how women are discriminated throughout their life cycle. And I always use the word that, and which is very popular amongst feminist and women's groups, is that women are discriminated in India from womb to tomb. That is, right from their mother's womb till they go to the graveyard, women experience discrimination throughout their lives. And this discrimination also includes a lot of sexual abuse and violence experiences throughout the life. So these are gender-based violence that women experience throughout the life cycle. We have a number of laws related to that, right from our constitution to lot of laws related to every act that I have written here we have a law for that. For our sex-selective abortions to widow abuse, we have laws for all the things. But in spite of that, the data that I showed is are very startling in our country. Now, what has happened in lockdown and pandemic? This is the situation, otherwise that exists in our country. But this pandemic of COVID-19 and lockdown, which is actually a very theme of this particular webinar, how it has impacted women in particular. Let's examine that. And these are all the precautions that we have taken, to combat COVID-19. We had a lockdown. We are practicing distancing, physical distancing. We are working from home. Right now, I'm at home. Stay home, stay safe. We are following, and we are also expected to follow hygiene. In women, the vulnerable group during COVID-19, we can divide them. I've divided them into 3 particular groups. One is young girls, second is a homemaker, and third is homemaker plus working women. I'm not using the category only working women because these working women are also homemaker, and how their vulnerability has increased during COVID-19 situations. And this I can prove through number of data that I have if I have time, but just to quickly go through, during the COVID-19 lockdown that happened, our country experienced almost of 67 days. We have seen child marriages have increased, child abuse cases have increased, and child abuse includes mainly girl child abuse, and child sexual abuse. Violence against adolescent girls have increased, and girls have dropped out of schools. So this is in terms of how pandemic has impacted girls, young girls. When we talk about homemakers, women who are at home and who are not working out to earn, their household responsibilities have increased because we know that in India, many women have domestic help, right from lower class women to upper middle class and high income group. There is always domestic help always available, at least to do some basic work. But during the lockdown, this help was not there, and that means there was an increased household responsibility. Women have experienced domestic violence. We have a number of examples and cases of that. Forced sex and marital rape have also increased with partner presence around all the time. This also women have to go through. And no mobility and loss of contact with support network. That became a reality which all of us are experiencing. Even I can't visit my neighbor's house, or in India we have a tendency to meet people in the evening, near the choraha, or go out to buy vegetables where we meet people, or go and to visit the temple where we meet people. All that options of meeting and networking also had become zero during the lockdown situation, and this increased women's vulnerability because they had no contact. And those women who were homemaker plus working, that means they were earning for work what they were doing, they had to work from home, and or they lost their jobs, and there was no privacy or me time available. We know, many of us who are women, and I also at many times I felt that when I run away from my home and my office space, my cabin is my place where I am free and I can do whatever I want, and that is at least some my time, which I usually long to when I'm at home. So this also reduced for women when they were working, and this increased their vulnerability during COVID-19 time. And I'm sure many of you will be able to identify with that. So having said this, that this is increased women's vulnerability, I'm going to talk about domestic violence as one, where I can talk about all other issues as well, but due to paucity of time, I can see only 5 more minutes. So I'm not going in detail about what is domestic violence. All of you are legal experts, but let me tell you, in reality context, when we refer to domestic violence, we refer to violence that is inflicted on married women by or a woman living with an intimate partner violence. We are talking about that, or women who are having a living in relationships. So there is a data available that domestic violence is pervasive. It exists across class, caste, race, ethnicity, religion, and even nations. It is a universal phenomena. But in India,